Okay, so welcome everyone to Supporting Our Colleagues, Connecting the Dots, and Continuously Improving. My name is Jessica Yett. I'm the Science Curriculum Specialist for Anaheim Union High School District.
And I'm Regina Powers. I am the District Librarian. We wanted to share some facts about our district before we got started.
So Anaheim Union High School District, we are a public school district and we serve grades 7 through 12. We have about 29,500 students enrolled and we serve 1,200 teachers. We're about 70% SES or socioeconomically disadvantaged students with about 20% English learners.
We are made up of about 20 schools, 8 junior high and 8 high school. We also have within our district Oxford Academy, which was recently elected the #1 school in the nation. Yay. We just started a new online campus called Cambridge Virtual Academy. We have 2 alternate education programs and 1 also award-winning school called Hope for special ed. We serve 5 different portions of 5 different cities, and we have 5 elementary districts that feed into our schools. And by the way, we noticed that a lot of people were asking the same question based on what we've read from past presentations and feedback, that a lot of people are asking the same questions. How do we reach our teachers? And that's how Jessica and I came up with today's presentation.
So one of the components is providing opportunities for reflection and really providing opportunities for collaboration, not only at their site with us, but across the district as well. We're going to dive into 4 different components within our presentation today. The cycle for continuous improvement that we utilize is referred to as the PDSA cycle. So we'll dive in a little bit into that. And then how do we connect the dots and support our colleagues in connecting the dots? We'll provide one example of that through our first best instruction or FBI Placemat. And then
we're also going to dive into like a strategic planning process that we've used in the past, along with intentional lesson design, in which we created what we call the 5 C's descriptors. And then we're going to also include, of course, reflection and professional growth, specifically for our induction candidates and mentors. So our district is old. It's over a century old. Lots of things have changed over the years, including our logos, as you can see on the screen. And most districts, as you know, are driven by a number of things. Their Department of Education, state mandates, standards, the standards and frameworks, and then also they're often influenced by legislation and educational trends. Teachers can learn on their own from their peers, from mentors on Twitter, and what they learn in that environment can be applicable to the classroom right away, correct? So then district professional development is driven by a bigger picture, long-term fix-its to bigger challenges. So sometimes the disconnect between teachers and the district professional development, there's like a mismatch there, because teachers want something that can fix things right away, and the district has a different driver. So as district and district coaches and leaders, we have to understand the why behind our district's drivers and know our audience, our teachers and coaches, well enough to share and communicate professional development so it's effective and makes a connection for them. In case you didn't believe how often education changes, right? We have a little activity for you. What's going to happen is some acronyms are going to appear on the screen, and your job is to speak out loud no mics necessary, but speak out loud the meaning of each. So for example, the first acronym is No Child
Left Behind.
That's right. So we don't need to have the microphones on for now. We're going to make you speak these as they pop on the screen to yourself. But the No Child Left Behind has turned into Every Student Succeeds Act, right? Okay, so keep your eye on the screen. The acronyms are going to appear on the right-hand side. And again, your job is to speak out loud what the meanings are behind each as they appear.
Professional learning community, project-based learning, California standards for the teaching profession.
Next generation science standards, social emotional learning.
Okay, so the last one, also we were thinking of another eighth one would be, where do you go? English as a second language has converted to English language learner, and now there's yet another term, right? Multilingual learner.
Or emergent bilingual, right?
Yeah, there you go. So it's true. And everything changes within our educational world. How do we keep up?
So yes, obviously educational trends change, district drivers change, new acronyms, more acronyms within the alphabet soup of education. We need tools to not only adapt, but to help support our teachers to improve. So one of the cycles that is available is the PDSA, or the Plan, Do, Study, Act cycle for learning and continuous improvement. So we use this not only with our teachers, but this can be used with our students as well as at the organizational level. So to begin, we always need to begin with some sort of plan and really thinking about what is it that we're trying to accomplish. Why are we trying to accomplish that? And what is involved that we need to put into our plan? Once we have developed some sort of plan, we need to obviously carry it out, but we also recognize the need to document. Documenting challenges, documenting successes, what do we notice, what do we wonder, and as we conclude our documentation and our carrying out of the plan, we need to study that data, whether it is quantitative or qualitative, but really study and reflect and then act upon it. So did it work? How do we know? How do we know it's real if we feel that it did work? And as we revisit and reflect and refine, we need to determine what do we need to stop doing? What should we start doing? What should we change, or what should we continue to do? And really just accepting that there's always going to be change, and so how do we continuously improve? This quote from Elon Musk, I feel really captures what it is that we should all embrace, and it's very important to have a feedback loop where you're constantly thinking about what you've done and how you could be doing it better. So just as we would encourage our students to make their initial thinking visible and then gather new information and insights and refine their thinking, build upon their mistakes, misconceptions, but also celebrate and honor what it is that they've done well. We should be doing that not only individually, but at the organizational level as well.
It's worth mentioning at this point that we today are focusing on collaboration and the importance of reflection. Reflection and collaboration, and adding them to our own feedback loops. Reflection includes, like we've said, learning from past mistakes and making things better that other people have done or you have done on your own, or mentors have done. And this is all just part of the cycle, right? The nature of science in this cycle. But often we forget to include two important pieces. We forget to credit where the work came from that we're building upon. And we also oftentimes forget to pause and to reflect and record our progress. This quote here, the one you've heard it a million times, I'm sure, about standing upon the shoulders of giants, that's attributed often to Isaac Newton from 1676, but it's actually attributed to, I mean, it's supposed to be attributed to John of Salisbury from the 11th century. So again, we have to remember that things, if we don't remember the past and credit where things came from, then we lose that bit of history that we can learn from. And without the steps of crediting others and keeping track of our growth and our reflection, we miss out on that whole learning cycle ourselves, and our students do as well.
So to provide a student-facing example of how they can also engage in the PDSA, this one I actually would like to credit to Oakland USD. We found this early in our NGSS exploration, and many of our teachers in our district have embraced it and have used it as a base for how they support students in science. So this is the RRR. It's the refine, revise, and reflect. And I should mention that all of the resources that we have, we will provide at the end to you guys in links. So the RRR requires that the students make their thinking visible for their initial model and explanation. As they're diving in to further understand the science phenomena, they will refine their thinking through new experiences, whether the input is a video, an article, a lab experience. They would have those experiences here, and they would take notes and really refine their thinking of how does this help them better understand the phenomena that they're exploring. As they continue to bring in new inputs, then they revise their thinking. And so based on new learning, they revise and create a new model and explanation. But the part that we really appreciate is the reflection component. And in this final R, it's where they are really thinking about how their thinking has changed with regards to their understanding of the phenomena, and to identify in the process where did they gain the greatest understanding, and then to also record any additional questions or wonderings that they still have. So again, this cycle of improvement is something that we're encouraging within the science world as well as with our colleagues.
Another example that we use for continuous learning, improvement, and reflection are continuous notes. So instead of having notes, you have a set of notes for this meeting and a set of notes for that meeting, we just create one long continuous notes that we add to, and then that makes them easier to search. So for the whole year, we have one place to look for all of our notes, and we can search through those in one place. And it really makes it easier to reflect on where have we been, where are we going, what have we missed.
So the next little chunk is how we help support our teachers in connecting the dots, because there are so many different things that we are presented with. And so in our example that we're going to provide, it's our first best instruction, or FBI Placemat. And this is also an example of how our district has implemented the PDSA cycle, or a cycle for continuous improvement. So we'll kind of review a little bit of what this document contains, but really this is a loaded document, and we're not going to dive into all the components of it. Just use it more as an example of how we help support our colleagues connect the dots. And one of the things that we recognize is sometimes it's just an assumption that when we have new colleagues, or just amongst the colleagues that we currently have, that it's an assumption that our teachers are able to connect the dots between all the different things that either the state expects of us or that the district is also rolling out. But how do we intentionally make opportunities for having those conversations and putting the pieces all together? So this is our initial FBI Placemat, and just to kind of go over some of the components that are on the Placemat and that remain the same through each of the iterations that we had. You'll see just highlighted in that yellow box that just popped up, what is taught, how is taught, and how you learned. this is going to be something that all teachers are going to be working with. What are you teaching? How are you teaching it? How do you know that it is learned? The components that are under each of those sections have may change over time, but these are some of the things that we have identified. So for example, what we began with, we had the standards, and the skills is what you teach. How you teach it is through the 5 C's, or what is more recognized as the 4 C's, as well as through ed technology. And then various ways for how we know it is learned. One of the other components that we have highlighted on here is at the very bottom. We want to recognize, how do we know that first best instruction, or that our teachers are really engaging in intentional instructional design? In our district, we engage in reflective learning walks. We have lesson studies, and then our PLCs. So these are ways that we could utilize this tool in our intentional lesson design, and in seeing, are we including all the different components? And so how do we get to these iterations? Well, for the past 7 years, our district has held an annual day of professional learning in October, and each spring we come together as an ed division team to start planning for that next October's PD day. So it happened that in 2016, we were utilizing our Placemat and really trying to figure out, okay, well, how do we plan for our future based on the various components that we have at hand now, and what kind of improvements do we need to make so that this is not just a piece of paper that we ask teachers to use for their planning, but that we actually are using it as a tool. So one of the things that we recognize is that in the next October, we're really going to have more of a focus on access and equity. And so we wanted to ensure that that was highlighted, and that is really an overarching or an umbrella thing within our instructional design. And so that being one of the topics of the next school year's professional learning, we added it to the Placemat. There were other components that were also added to the Placemat as well, but we also used it as in 2017 as a tool to align to the California standards for the teaching profession. So we did an activity with all of our site administrators in when you look at the FBI Placemat and you look at the California standards for the teaching professions, how can we use these tools as a conversation starter with your teachers in instructional design, and how those two things align? So that this is, again, just not a piece of paper, just a thing, but it's what we do. And it's helping us remember all of the different things we do, and just being able to identify what we're doing well, as well as areas that we can improve. At the end of 2017, again, we revisited this in order to plan for the October PD the next year. And we recognized a lot of areas of improvement. And I'm not going to highlight all of these, but we definitely had to shift a lot of things around. And one of the big things that we recognized is that we had some deficit-based thinking on our previous placemats. For example, in the far right-hand section, it said student success measured by their needs being met. And so that, in just little piece, student success measured by the mastery of learning goals. We also added the CSTPs to this document, again, as a reminder. Taking a step back, again, we know this is super loaded. One of our next steps for continuous improvement is recognizing this needs to be hyperlinked so that people can actually click on the different components and be able to learn more. And so that is one of our next steps that we recognize is needed in utilizing this more as a tool than just another thing. Also, being able to answer to our teachers, why do we have another version of this? We have another version of this because in AUHSD, we are also striving for continuous improvement. And if we recognize that there is a need and something that needs to be changed, we need to value that in the document that we're utilizing as a tool.
So another piece, you have all heard of the 4 C's: communication, collaboration, creativity, and critical thinking. Well, at our district, we're recognized, the city of Anaheim is recognized as a city of kindness. And so our district has added a 5th C, character and compassion. In 2017, under the direction of our superintendent, we conducted a large-scale strategic planning meeting. And if you haven't done a strategic planning meeting, they're lots of fun, but they involve way more people outside of your district. So we invited students, parents, teachers, obviously, administrators, our elementary feeder school districts, after-school program providers, community colleges, our UC partners and university partners, and community and business partners to attend this, what is called the Tesseract Summit. That's what our superintendent called it. And each of these people, through their own lens, they were set strategically at different tables and invited to ask or respond to the question in the prompt, how do we know that the 5 C's are real? What does a classroom look like where the 5 C's are implemented? What does that classroom feel like and sound like? How are the 5 C's, how do we see them in action? And each of those people at the tables had a conversation about that.
So we're actually going to ask that you engage in something similar to as if you guys were at the summit. And we're going to do this in the form of a chat waterfall. If you're not familiar with the chat waterfall, you'll type your response into the chat, but you will not push send until instructed to do so. That way, all of the responses come in at once. And this is kind of similar to in the classroom, asking your students to write first. So to make their thinking visible first before turning to a partner or before sharing out to the class. So this is providing additional processing time, but also valuing all voices so that nobody's stealing your aha. And it gives you also that opportunity to look back at the chat and see where your thinking was validated or to pick up some new ideas. So the prompt is exactly what Regina had mentioned. What does a classroom look like, sound like, or feel like that promotes, and we just chose here, collaboration. So you can use the sentence frame if you would like, a classroom that promotes collaboration, and then fill in the blank. So we're going to give just about 30 seconds to type in a response, and then we'll let you know when to push enter, so don't push enter yet. So about 10 more seconds. Let's do a quick countdown in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. If you can push enter, and then the responses will come into the chat. And you can kind of scroll up and see what some of your colleagues felt. A classroom that promotes collaboration, what is that like?
Nice.
Yeah.
I like noisy, cooperative groupings, moving parts, listening, engaged. Oh, that's beautiful. Beautiful. So as a result of our strategic planning, the Tesseract Summit, and we've had a couple of these, we actually took the feedback from the participants and created what we call descriptors, but they're documents that are built around each one of the, one of the 5 C's. So, and we're going to break down one of these descriptors. There's not enough time out to go over any of these, but we're going to provide these documents to you. At the top of each, you'll notice that there's a description of what the characteristic is that we're looking for and aiming for including in our classroom, in our school system. And then the middle portion here, which I think is quite brilliant, there are tabs on the left-hand side that coordinate with what we're going to call like soft skills. These are non-academic skills. They are soft skills that 21st century learners should have, and that's what workers request or employers request. But then at the top, you see that they're measured by emerging, progressing, or excelling for each one of those categories. And it gives everybody the opportunity to kind of measure where you are in this soft skill. And finally, at the lower portion, also brilliant, I think, is what a classroom looks like that incorporates collaboration. And, you know, just from your chat waterfall, you'll see that some of those things are mentioned here. I don't see noisy, but I love that word. Maybe we could add that. I love that. Yes, noisy.
So diving into our final component, as a public educator in California, you're very likely familiar with the CSTPs, or California Standards for the Teaching Profession, as they're used to prepare our teachers in pre-service, support our teachers through induction, and then through coaching later on, as well as used with evaluation with our administrators and our teachers. We also encourage our folks to utilize the CSTPs in intentional lesson design and reflection and improvement, as well as with our reflective learning walks, as it was mentioned on our FBI Placemat. With specific to induction, though, we have begun having our induction candidates and mentors go through a process of CSTP Self Assessment. So this is intended to be a conversation between the candidates and mentors, where the candidate will identify strengths and areas of growth and set some goals for the school year. And then utilizing this document with their weekly check-ins. So this is kind of a conversation starter, but it's also a place to continue conversations. And this will also support the induction candidate as they approach their final reflection, recognizing that they're likely going to have some areas that they self-identified in the strengths that maybe they recognize they have some more growth in, or maybe an area of growth that they didn't yet touch. And just to be able to validate to our induction candidates that we are always in the process of continuous improvement, and that there will be places that we will continually need to grow in.
And that's okay. Tom Turkey is okay if he mentions the same thing over again. Also, our induction program was recently audited by the California Commission on Teacher Credentialing, the CTC. The process revealed that we were kind of missing opportunities to provide sufficient support for and evidence of our mentors' growth. So the leadership team, the induction leadership team, in response to that, invited our mentors to a meeting. We grabbed these 6 elements from Elena Aguilar's, sorry, her book, The Art of Coaching. Sorry. And the mentors were asked to reflect on each one of these 6 guidelines.
Regina, do you want to get a drink of water?
No, I'm not.
Okay. Okay.
I got
Power through.
All right. An allergy. So during this mentor meeting, the mentors actually added their feedback and were asked to reflect on what would your coaching look like if you incorporated one of these 6 elements. And through their participation in a Jamboard, their input was created or added to this template, which we are calling the coaching continuum. And additionally, we also created what we call the IMP, which is an individualized learning plan for our mentors. And they also reflect on this continuum, and they have a place where they can reflect upon and add their growth, or add questions, or add any other type of feedback and learning that they are gathering over the year, working with their candidates. So we have covered a lot. Sorry, we rushed through it, but we did want to make sure that we made the connection right between our continuous improvement throughout the district using reflection and collaboration. We shared with you our Plan, Do, Study, Act PDSA cycle that we rely on. We connected the dots with our first best instruction placemat that we use throughout the district. We told you about our strategic planning and our modeling intentional design by using our 5 C's and descriptors. And we talked a little bit about reflection and continuous improvement, our professional growth with our mentors and our candidates in our induction program specifically.
We also recognize again that we have a lot of next steps. For example, the hyperlinks to the FBI Placemat, having more of a classroom-ready rubric for the 5 C's descriptors, and improving on our mentor coaching leadership, as well as the coaches that we have at the various sites. And then just improving overall the system of collaboration, but then also the onboarding process. Right now, our onboarding process of new colleagues, we need to work with HR so that we can connect the dots with all of our new folks and not just say it was a one and done and expect that site colleagues will support that. One of the things that we recognize is also needed is a professional learning menu for ongoing professional learning. I'm going to put in the chat real quick the link to our slides, which will also link you to this slide here, which you can grab any of the hyperlinked resources. And we also want to give you guys just a moment to breathe and reflect before we get to Q&A time. So at least a good 2 breaths. And again, any questions that you guys have? I did see in the chat there was a question from Nancy. Does the coach ILP, is the coach ILP the same as the candidate's ILP? So the candidate's ILP is different than the coach's IMP or the individual mentoring plan, where the coaches are identifying one component that they feel that they have a need for growth, and then developing a plan on how will you achieve that, and then reflecting upon that.
Yeah. So they're totally separate. Mentors focus on their growth, and candidates focus on, their learning experience as well. Totally separate. I think we included both of those, didn't we?
Yes. So for this is the mentoring continuum. And the 6 different components are somewhat aligned to the CSTP 6 components, but the IMP, or the individualized mentoring plan, that's based on the questions that you see on the left-hand side. So it's a separate document. I didn't include the second one just because it's just the questions.
Yes, in that the FBI Placemat, we're sorry, there's so much on there that we do as a district. We use that with our new teachers as well to get them kind of situated, because all districts have a lot to offer. Any other questions?
I just want to thank you for the resources. I really do like that placemat idea and the graphic and how it's connecting the dots, and I would love to adapt it for our district. Putting in, and linking everything. I think, and having teachers participate in populating that document. That's neat.
Yeah, and a lot of us, we like interpret our own, we interpret things differently. So having it hyperlinked will kind of eliminate that. Well, what do you mean when you talk about UDL? What exactly is that? We can have a designated definition where everybody can refer to it.
And Allison put into the chat the link for the survey for this session.
Thank you for that IMP. It's making me think on how I could bring that to our instructional coach, instructional support team, and how we could use that for instructional coaches. So we could reflect on our coaching. And it is definitely something I want to bring up with my director of curriculum and instruction, and as something for me to also look over, since I am the coordinator of our induction program, just even something that you can use as a coordinator, how effective are you, and all that reflection. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. And beware the CTC. They're looking for mentor growth too. Any other questions?
The link to that survey is for April 29th. And so I think we need a different link.
Okay.
Emailing the CDEF team. This is what they sent me. I apologize for that. Let's see.
It's actually for 421, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Whoops.
Right, for April at some point. But not
Right,
today.
right,
Yeah, thanks.
right.
And to Tina, since with the CTC about feedback, this is the first year of trying this out, and so there's a recognition that this is a starting point for definite future improvement. I was one of the mentors, and so I got to engage in the process, but we needed a feedback cycle, and so I was talking to Regina. I'm like, nobody gave me any feedback. So it was very much individualized growth. But I definitely, it was kind of an eye opener of, okay, I have areas that I'm not even touching that. And so it was really good to be able to not only be a part of putting together the descriptors, but then also to see, oh my gosh, this aligns with the CSTPs and how, how our mentoring practices should align with how we're moving our teachers forward in these components. So that was pretty exciting.
I like how it's aligned to the CSTPs because we have our partnership with UCLA. So we're under their induction program. They went through the accreditation this year as well.
Oh.
And they mentioned that was one of the things as well is, okay, what professional development do we have for the mentors to reflect? And based on all of that, one of my teachers actually did his capstone project on reflecting based on your CSTP goals. So this is definitely something that I will be sharing with him as well, like say, hey, look at, here's another school who was thinking the same thing as you. So here's a tool that we could use. And it will probably be something I will also use with my next cohort of teachers.
Thank you guys for coming. Really appreciate the positive feedback. So thank you. Any constructive feedback is great too.
Thank you. Yeah.
You guys did great, both
Thank you.
both of you.
Thank you. Well, thank you for coming.